Unlike the feminists who say this is what they care about, J.K. Rowling is walking around as a living, breathing example of what feminists only pretend to be. Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for the support. On my channel, I like to give my opinion and perspective on things that are happening today, things that I think actually matter to everyday people, especially those of us trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. I do like to talk about current events and politics, and my perspective does tend to be more on the conservative side of things. Please like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and also share it with others. Also, be sure you are subscribed. All of these things help me to grow my channel and help me to reach more people that value logic, reason, and sanity. Also, be sure to find me on Rumble under Outspoken Samantha in the event that YouTube decides I have violated their community standards and chooses to kick me off their platform forever. That being said, let's get into today's topic. Well, remember about a month ago when this video from Vice went viral, and it was of this panel of 9 women of different political ideologies debating on the pro versus anti-feminist movement, what it looks like in America today, does it still exist, etc. And of course, the women on the left tried to insist that women in America are oppressed, that we face barriers, that we have limited opportunity, or whatever it is. And let's just have a little bit of a recap of that.
Remove systemic barriers to engage in society.
It's like there are the barriers, right, that we constantly ignore that are very much systemic and microaggressive, right? We see them and experience them every day.
What?
Turns out women are facing oppression in America today, and not just in America, but pretty much across all Western countries. And it's because of policies that are advocated for by people like feminists. They stand behind men who want to call themselves women, and just by changing their name and pronouns, they have access to women's spaces and awards and scholarships and opportunities that have previously been designated just for women. Also eliminating words like mother and breastfeeding, and even the word woman itself is offensive to them. If you try to define what a woman is, they just want none of it. They don't want to hear about it. And alternatively, they think that using words like menstruator and people capable of getting pregnant or people capable of giving birth are more inclusive and empowering to women. Newsflash, I would argue that reducing a human being down to the functions of their body and simply calling them by that function is something that it's the kind of language that people use when you want to reduce that person to being less than human. So it's having the opposite effect. But here's the thing, if I were to call myself a feminist, if I were to create a feminist movement and wanted to steer that movement in a particular direction dedicated to certain causes, now stick with me because it's going to get a little bit crazy. I would want that feminist movement to be focused on protecting women. It's crazy. It's a very controversial, bigoted, hateful, racist, anti-climate change thing to say, but it's true. So this brings me to J.K. Rowling. She, to me, is the epitome of what a feminist should be. You know, if someone was to call themselves a feminist, this is who I imagine that they would be. She's someone who started from ground zero, essentially. She used her talents to work hard. She didn't ask for special treatment. She didn't use her struggles in life to paint herself as a victim and ask for special consideration to elevate herself. She recognized the opportunities that she had, and she put the work in. Clearly, she has achieved enormous success, and not only that, she has used her success to advocate for women who are facing real oppression and who are facing real injustices. Unlike the feminists who say this is what they care about, J.K. Rowling is walking around as a living, breathing example of what feminists only pretend to be. And of course, she is relentlessly targeted by the left, by feminists, by trans activists for her position because she has committed the crime of acknowledging the scientifically verified biology of men and women. And she advocates for policies based on the sex that you were born as because, like all sane and reasonable people, she can see from a mile away the issues that things like self-ID laws would pose to biological women, because essentially anybody that calls themselves a woman and be regarded as such across society could pose a lot of risk to women just by being able to do so at the drop of a hat. And she has also refused to be bullied into promoting the delusion that biology is not real. This idea that a grown man can wake up one day and say they're a woman and that everybody around them has to just go along with it. So a while ago, she came to the defense of a woman, her name is Maya Forstater, who lost her job because she publicly stated similar positions of acknowledging biological sex. And her tweet in defense of this woman said, "Dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who will have you. Live your best life in peace and security, but force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real? I stand with Maya." So she's standing up for this woman who lost her job for stating her opinions and using her voice for the things that she believes, and she's targeted and harassed for it. Another one of her controversial tweets that have sent trans activists into an absolute tailspin is this: "Sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak truth." And I would 100% agree with that. Truth is what is compassionate. Because if you lie to someone, especially somebody who is already struggling with their mental health, and lead them to believe things that are not true, you are leading them down a path that can never have true stability, because they're always going to be chasing things that cannot exist. If you're telling a man that they can be a woman, not a trans woman, but actually be the same as a biological woman, you are leading them down a path where they are constantly going to be questioning why the things that they are doing are not working. It's not because society doesn't accept them, but it's because there's no amount of drugs or surgery that can make your body function and truly present like a biological woman. And in that process of trying to make this happen, they lose their connection to what is real, and that is their natural born biology and their natural born body. Something that the trans movement doesn't even want to try to help people appreciate about themselves or be comfortable with, to avoid the kind of tailspin that truly compassionate people should want everyone to avoid. We've got to be honest with people about what is and is not possible. Anyway, I would say that J.K. Rowling is the real feminist. She has been very, very outspoken against legislation being pushed by Nicola Sturgeon, who's the First Minister of Scotland, that would allow men to self-identify as women. This means no medical diagnosis, no evaluation, no assessment, no medical intervention or verification whatsoever. It would be lovely to live in a world where everyone had good intentions. No violence, no child abuse, no robbery. Women wouldn't have to feel nervous about walking home at night. Parents wouldn't have to worry about children playing out. But no society is crime-free, which is why we have the law, the courts, and the police. That has not stopped Nicola Sturgeon asking Scottish women to pretend they live in a utopia. To make it easier for people to legally change their sex, the First Minister is pushing through reforms that many believe would compromise women's safety. Last week, Reem Al-Salem, the UN Special Reporter on Violence Against Women and Girls, wrote to Sturgeon to warn her it would be open to abuse by male sex offenders endangering women and girls. The Equality and Human Rights Commission, EHRC, has also flagged its concerns. At the moment, in order for someone male to be recognized as a woman in law, thus getting additional rights and access to women's spaces, they have to obtain a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria and show that they have been living as the opposite sex for 2 years. Sturgeon is pressing through reforms that would shift Scotland to self-ID. Any male who has lived as if they were of the opposite sex for 3 months and who signs a self-declaration will be granted a GRC. No Scottish minister has been able to say what living as the opposite sex actually means, and the EHRC has noted this provision risks reinforcing harmful sexist stereotypes. J.K. Rowling, along with many other people, have been very vocal about the concerns about what this would mean for women, and the fact that anybody with an ounce of common sense can see how open these policies would be to be abused by predators. And that's not to say that all transgender people are predators, because that is an argument that the left and these trans activists like to make, is that when we voice these concerns about policies being abused by predators, that we're saying that all transgender people are predators. And that's not the case. All predators are predators, and predators look for a way to access victims, and that can include pretending to be transgender to gain access to the spaces where their victims would be. It's that simple. And when you have the self-ID laws in place that are so loosely defined or have no real definition or restrictions or guidelines at all, who's to say that somebody wouldn't say, well, just because I didn't change my wardrobe or my pronouns or my name or present myself in the way of the opposite gender, that doesn't mean that I haven't been living as the opposite gender for the last 3 months. They could say I've been living, in my heart and in my mind, I have been living as the opposite gender for the last 3 months or whatever time frame. And the vulnerability to abuse and exploitation of these policies came to light recently when Adam Graham, a man charged with violently sexually assaulting 2 women, changed his name to Isla Bryson after he was charged, and because of this identity change, he was housed with female prisoners. Because that's how easy it is for self-ID laws to be abused by abusers. They know that there's absolutely no criteria to meet other than uttering the words, I'm a woman, and maybe throwing on a wig, and boom, they get into a sexual predator's playground. Anybody that says this is about hate for trans people is willfully ignoring the real issue, and you're part of the problem and you don't have any interest in the solution. J.K. Rowling also brought to light a story of an ex-prisoner who came forward to explain the absolute terror she lived in while being housed with a trans woman who was a biological male charged with violent crimes. A former prisoner has told how she went through hell after being forced to share a shower block with violent trans inmates. Amanda Benson, 41, revealed she was so terrified of being raped and ending up pregnant that she felt compelled to have a contraceptive coil fitted while being behind bars. The mom of 4, locked up with 2 trans prisoners, one convicted of murder, the other for domestic violence, accused Nicola Sturgeon of serving up women to predators on a rainbow platter in Scotland's jails. She said, my whole time in prison on constant high alert, my nerves were frazzled with fear. These incredibly violent men were walking around the communal shower area naked and sometimes clearly aroused. Myself and other women were in cubicles with only a curtain to protect us. I was shaking with fear. In the end, I went to the prison clinic and I had a coil fitted because I believed I could be raped at any time. I didn't want one. I felt forced to do it. I really would like to see all of these so-called feminists to look in the face of somebody like Amanda Benson and the hundreds of other women who live in terror right now, like she did, and tell them that they're transphobic, and tell them that they're not actually coming from a place of fear or concern, that they really just want to stand against the trans movement. Because when you target people like J.K. Rowling for being vocal about the danger of self-ID laws, then you are also targeting people like Amanda Benson who have to live with the consequences of your ignorance and your activism. But what did J.K. Rowling do in response to these laws? J.K. Rowling works her magic again. The launch of a sexual assault support center for women is always good news, but when it is the brainchild of J.K. Rowling, it is very big news, especially given the feminist philanthropist and world-famous author has smartly taken preemptive steps to outwit her detractor. Rowling has funded and designed a new women-only sexual violence support service, Biera's Place, with Open News today. I founded Biera's Place to provide what I believe is currently an unmet need for women in the Lothians area, the author said this weekend. As a survivor of sexual assault myself, I know how important it is that survivors have the option of women-centered and women-delivered care at such a vulnerable time. Biera's Place will offer an increase in capacity for services in the area, and I hope, enable more women to process and recover from their trauma. The board, which includes Rowling, is comprised of experts with a lifelong commitment to ending men's violence toward women and girls. They include former prison governor and LGBT rights campaigner Rona Hotchkiss, previous Scottish Labour leader Joanne Lamont, GP Margaret McCartney, and Susan Smith, who is the director of For Women Scotland. Its CEO is Isabel Kerr, a veteran of the rape crisis movement. Biera's Place is strictly female only as defined by Section 212 of the Equality Act, which states that a woman is a female of any age. If you are a natal woman aged 16 and over, reside in the Lothians, and have experienced sexual violence or abuse at any time in your life, a free and confidential service is now there for you. She took action to actually protect women and girls from the policies that are just open to women who are already vulnerable to be re-victimized by other violent criminals. Thankfully, recently, Adam Graham / Isla Bryson was removed from the women's facility and rehoused in a men's prison, and Nicola Sturgeon was forced to reconsider this self-ID legislation. Delighted to announce that after a surprise visit to the real world where she reluctantly admitted a hulking great rapist doesn't become a woman by putting on a wig, our illustrious leader has made it safely home to "you're all just bigots" territory. Here's the thing, and I think Nicola Sturgeon knows this more than anybody. If the left, if these feminists or these trans activists, anybody that's been pushing the idea that trans women are women, or who refuse to acknowledge that somebody could pretend to be trans just for the sake of gaining access to women's spaces, if they admit that a criminal could change their identity to get into a woman's prison, then every single one of their arguments on this issue starts to fall apart. They have given us this thread to pull at, where they have to acknowledge that a man could use that same motive to get into a woman's locker room or get into a woman's bathroom, or somebody with those same narcissistic tendencies could use it to get into a women's athletic competition, or to access, women's scholarships, or take a job from a woman, or anything that has been previously established to be, to recognize the achievements of biological women. They have to acknowledge that the possibility for exploitation in any area where these laws exist is possible, which means they also have to acknowledge that not everyone who says that they are the opposite gender actually is. So it really does lead them down this path that they are so desperately trying to avoid. Questioning one policy, pointing out one verifiable abuse of this policy, sends them down this rabbit hole that they truly do not want to be going down. I would have to admit that the arguments and concerns of people like myself, like J.K. Rowling, like Rebecca Phillips, like Riley Gaines, who has been very vocal about what competing against biological men in swimming has done to the athletic opportunities for herself and her teammates.
No one within the NCAA is willing to acknowledge us, our feelings, our safety, our privacy. I've really tried. I feel like it's really only happened like the past couple weeks where I get emotional talking about the locker room scene, because it is just so wild that you can turn around and see a 6'4" biological man pull his pants down watching you undress, and no one is willing to stick up for you.
And the fact that these arguments are coming from a place of logic and legitimate concern and not from a place of hate. If you want to hear what else J.K. Rowling has been doing just briefly to actually advocate for women in situations that are oppressive, since the U.S. abandoned Afghanistan and so many of these girls, their entire lives changed overnight and they had opportunities literally ripped out from underneath them. She openly speaks out for these girls and the things that they have lost and the oppression that they are facing. And not only that, she has taken action. She has used her own money and her own resources to help women in these situations. She donated hundreds of thousands of pounds to save more than 100 female lawyers and their families who are facing murder in Afghanistan. J.K. Rowling is an example of what not being a coward looks like. This woman has 0 F's to give about people who criticize her for actually being in the center of these issues, wanting rights for women and for trans people without sacrificing the safety and well-being of either side, wanting to find balance and wanting to have an open conversation about these issues, which is much needed if we're going to establish safety and, rights for everybody. This is what it looks like when you know that what you're standing for is right, and no amount of pretty branding of a belief system that is the opposite of what you stand for is going to make you change your mind, is going to make you flip to the other side, and no amount of bullying is going to be able to intimidate you. This is what it looks like when you don't care how many names people call you, because the more you keep speaking the truth, not your truth, not a truth, not a version of the truth, but the weaker and more desperate the other side looks. She has acknowledged reality, she is going by scientific fact, and she's looking at things from a broader perspective and recognizing where the holes in these policies are and where they can be exploited and where they can be used by people who want to do bad things. It doesn't matter who they are. They will put on a wig. They will put on as much lipstick as they need to. They will change their name to whatever they need to change it to if that is going to allow them to access people that they want to victimize. Please like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Please share it with somebody else or tag them in this video. Help me to grow this channel. Turn the notification bell on so you'll be notified every time I post a video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.